And we are joined by one of our insiders. He's Mike Giardi of Boston Sports Journal. What do you hear, Mike? Anything else besides Drake May is going to be a Patriot?
No, just the buzz, and I think Mike Reese had it out earlier today, and it's been sort of the talk the last couple of days, is that the Patriots are considering the idea of jumping back into the back half of the first round. And I know Mike mentioned wide receiver. I've also heard tackle. I think it depends on how the run happens on the board, because we know there's going to be some, and whether or not the player that they like is starting to slip into that 27, 28, 29 range. Can they go up and get him? It makes a lot of sense to me, because you need blue chippers or something close to it. You don't have too many on your roster. If you feel like that guy can come in right away and help you move some collateral in the draft to go up.
How aggressive do you think they'd be in a move like that? Because I go back to what Elliot Wolf told us last week, which was we're a draft and develop team. The more picks we have, the better. And obviously a move up, it's going to cost you picks. And I look at, if you move up into the early 20s, it's a trade like they made a couple years ago with Kyle Duggar. You're probably talking about 34 and 68 for 22, 23, 24. There's also a trade the Jaguars and Bucks made 2 years ago that would be 27, 28, 29, 30 for 34, 103, right, and 180. So how aggressive do you think they're going to be in that move up?
Yeah, I don't think they'd go that far up. I think we're more talking about really the back end of the first round, especially when you start looking at receiver position, right? Because Carolina at 33, almost a lock to take a receiver, right? They have to do everything they can to help Bryce Young. Do you like that guy? Do you want to get in front of them? Obviously Buffalo's the team, so you start looking
Chiefs,
at 27,
maybe.
right? The Chiefs could be involved. So I think that's sort of you're playing that game where what's your intel tell you about those teams and what they want and how the board is falling now, and can we slide up there? And again, I look at the day 3 stuff, and I know people love to throw the darts and you got Brady in the 6th round, this and the other thing. Man, take a hike with that. If you came out of this thing with 3 really good players and you cashed in the rest of your chips at the back end of the draft to make sure that you're able to maneuver to the front end of the draft, that's what I'm doing, because, again, I just look at their roster and say they don't have enough guys that make you go, wow, enough guys that other teams say we have to do something to that guy to stop him, otherwise we're in trouble. They don't have that.
And they can come out of this draft with 4, maybe even 5 top 100 picks. There's permutations where they can do that, and I feel like as the more picks we have, right, it's got to be the more good picks we have should mainly be the focus there.
Yeah, I always say it's a Felger line, but do that on your own time. Day 3 thing to me is you have certain guys. I mean, you're into it. I've been diving into it. There are guys that I like that are going to be day 3 guys, but I'm not going to go crazy if they get rid of those picks or get rid of a couple of those picks because they're trying to move up in the draft on day 1 and day 2 when you get your impact players.
Mike Giardi here from Boston Sports Journal. Mike, you've covered the draft locally here, but also nationally. When the draft happens and you hear about trades or you hear about rumors, what do you believe in? What don't you? What are some of the signs? And is there anything out there today that you're like, keep an eye on that one?
Well, the San Francisco one that's come up today has made a ton of sense to me in that I don't think San Francisco wants to move Ayuk. I think if push comes to shove, and they say we can only pay one of these guys, then Debo's the one they're going to move. He's 28. He has an injury history, right? Ayuk's 26. He's a number 1 receiver, and he's entering his prime. That's the guy I'll pay that guy $30 million. That's what I'll do. The other guy who plays 11, 12 games and has to leave 3 of those games and then come back, and he's not the same guy because the toe hurts, the quad. And look, he's a great football player, but that's the guy that you move. But then I laugh because they're they're calling up into the top 10 and seeing what they can get for Debo and Ayuk. You're not getting a top 10 pick for Debo. That's not happening. You're probably not getting a top 10 pick for Ayuk either. But Ayuk and your first, maybe you can convince somebody at 12, 11, something like that. But Debo and your first, where does that get you?
Well, along those lines, maybe it's not the Patriots. Maybe it's not the Niners the Patriots talking about this. But it sounds like there's a couple teams looking to make trades like that tonight. If the Patriots are open to trading 34 and to move up, do you think there's a chance they're open to moving 34 for a guy like A.J. Brown or T. Higgins?
I think they would absolutely be interested in doing that. I just don't know that those guys are going for second-round picks, and that's the thing.
Even after Diggs just did?
Yeah, but there's a lot of history with Diggs and also some concerns about the back half of what the second half of last year looked like, and maybe he's at that age now where he just hit the wall. Now,
sure.
I'm sure it'll look pretty good with C.J. Stroud because I think he'll be pretty motivated based on how things went. But, there are all kinds of questions about Diggs beyond just the football part of it. Yeah, I think they would be. I just think you start looking at go to the Diggs trade prior to when he got traded from Minnesota to Buffalo. That was a first and a bunch of other stuff too. A.J. Brown went for a first on the clock and a fourth-round pick. Like, to me, Ayuk is in that class where that seems like that's the price. Maybe T. Higgins would be a second rounder.
So that was initially, I think it was like PFF had that. I don't know if it was reported or estimated value.
I think estimated,
a late first or early. And even if it's like 34 and 137, something like that, I don't think you're picking a player better than T. Higgins at 34th overall.
No, probably not. I just don't view him as a one. Now,
okay.
And he's obviously, you put him on this roster, he's automatically your best receiver, and he's your best receiver by a long shot. Then you're giving up the capital. You're also having to pay him. Again,
sure.
I don't really worry about the money too much because you can make the money do what you want. But all of a sudden, now when you're looking at your build, and I think if you're being smart about this is at least a couple years, right? Where you're going to have to sort of rebuild your base. You brought back some of the guys from last year that you sort of identified you want to keep as be part of your core, but there's just not as enough, I keep saying, there's not enough blue chippers. So, like, that's the problem that I have with that. Like, for Ayuk, if you said I could get Ayuk for a 2,
yeah, there's a reason I didn't include him there because it sounds like that's not the case.
But if you're talking about T. Higgins, then I'm a little bit more leery. And again, I understand he comes in and he helps you. He absolutely helps you. I just don't know at this stage of the development and the build. Now, if you told me after the draft they drafted someone, say they draft Brian Thomas at 18.
Yeah.
And then after the draft they say, you know what, we are actually going to trade T. Higgins. Oh, we'll give you a second next year. That's the best of like same thing with A.J. Brown. That's the best of both worlds because I'm keeping my early picks and then I'm able to cash in a chip from next year to this year that helps me and helps you hope your young quarterback at number 3.
One of the big words we heard this offseason was collaborative effort. I wanted to ask Jonathan Kraft's involvement, your take on that, and what's the support system going to be like for whatever quarterback they draft?
So I'll start with the Jonathan Kraft thing. And you've heard a bunch of different reports on this. I talked to someone who is high up on a team that's trying to get up to 3, and they came back and told me that Jonathan is involved. They didn't say to what extent. I don't know whether he's talking to Elliott, and Elliott says, well, I got to run this by my owner. But that was presented to me, and I wasn't even fishing for it. I just said, how's this sort of working? And that came up. So it's a little concerning, right?